Hello learners, welcome to InstaOwl chemistry class. We believe in democratizing education for all. Today we will be continuing with the third part of the chapter, metals and non-metals. So let's begin with today's class. In the previous class we were discussing the properties of ionic compounds, and I have discussed the melting point and boiling point, that they are very high. So in this table you can see different melting points and boiling points in Kelvin scale for different ionic compounds. We have for NaCl, lithium chloride, calcium oxide, magnesium chloride. So you can see their values are so high. That shows that ionic compounds have high melting and high boiling points. Now let's try to see this next slide, where we can see ionic compounds are formed through electron transfer from metals to non-metals. They are made of ions and form crystalline structures, and hence you can say that they are crystalline solids. They have high melting and boiling points. They are soluble in water, but they are not soluble in organic solvents like petrol, kerosene, diesel, which we have seen in the previous part also. They conduct electricity in molten state or in solution state. Molten state means melted form. Now let's move to the next important topic of the chapter, that is occurrence of metals, which will lead us to the important topic, metallurgy, how to obtain metals from their native form. So some metals like gold, silver and platinum exist in their free states in the Earth's crust due to low reactivity. Most metals are found as oxides, they are carbonates, sulfides or halides. Talking about minerals, what are minerals? So the naturally occurring elements or compounds in the Earth's crust are called minerals. So whichever element that we see is available in Earth's crust, that is called as, that rock will be called as a mineral. But if we are able to easily extract metal from that mineral by using less money, that means it is economic, and we can get a high quantity of metal, that means it is profitable. So then only we will call that particular mineral as an ore. So what is an ore? It is a mineral from which metals can be profitably extracted in high amount. Then the next definition we need to understand is gangue. So what is a gangue? It is the impurity. It is also called as matrix. So the impurities like rock, sand, clay found in the ore other than the metal combined. So these are the impurities. Before we proceed ahead, we have to remove these impurities first. So extraction of metals from ores involves three main steps. So let's try to understand these steps and then we'll move into their details. So the first one is the concentration of the ore. So first of all, we need to see what is an ore, what is a mineral, what are the impurities. Then once we know, then we are going to perform the first step, that is the concentration of the ore. Concentration of the ore means removing the impurities. So removal of impurities, the gangue from the ore is called as concentration. Once the impurities are removed, then we will get the metal in its combined form. It could be carbonate, sulfide or halide or an oxide. After concentration of ore, the next step is reduction. So right now we have metal in its combined form. So what we are going to do? Now these combined forms, as I have just stated, could be a carbonate, could be a sulfide, could be a halide or could be an oxide. So our prime target is to get the metal. Now it is easy to get the metal from its oxide. So what we are going to do, whatever the combined state of metal we have, we are going to reduce it. That means we will convert it into its oxide, and that oxide will further get reduced to give us metal. Reduction is removing of oxygen. So from the metal oxide we will reduce and get the metal. After that, once we have got the metal, this is in the crude form. So we need to refine it. We will refine it and the last step will be refining. So the crude metal is then purified and we get the final pure metal. Now let's try to get into these properties in details. So now this is the activity series. I've just discussed how the metals are obtained in Earth's crust. It depends on their reactivities and their activities. Over here we can see that potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, they are the most reactive ones. and we can obtain these pure metals by simply doing their electrolysis of their ore. But in case of zinc, lead, iron, copper, which are moderately reactive metals, for them we cannot do electrolysis. For them we need to do reduction using carbon. The third one, the last category, where we have silver and gold, which is the least reactive metals. For them, they are found in the native state, so we don't do reduction using carbon, we neither do electrolysis for them. So different reactivities gives us three different categories: highly reactive, moderately reactive and least reactive. Based on the reactivities, we will have different ways how we are going to extract these metals from their ore. Now let's move to this flowchart. This flowchart is very important because it explains us all the steps involved in metallurgy. So the first thing is to understand what is an ore, which is a mineral from which we can extract metal profitably and economically. Then the next step is concentration of ore, which means removal of the impurities. Then we will check whether our metal is highly reactive, moderately reactive or least reactive. Based on the reactivity of the metal present in the ore, we will choose our next step. For example, if the metal is of high reactivity, it is sodium or potassium, in that case we will perform electrolysis of the melted ore, or you can say electrolysis of molten ore. Through this we will get a pure metal, as you can see in the slide. Next, if the metal is of moderately reactive, it is a moderate reactive metal, then we will check whether the metal in the ore is a carbonate or it is a sulfide. If the metal is carbonate, we are going to perform calcination for it. If the metal is sulfide, we are going to perform roasting for it. We will see in the coming slide what is calcination and what is roasting. Next thing, once calcination or roasting is done, the resultant is metal oxide. That means calcination or roasting is a process through which we can convert carbonate or sulfide ore into its metal oxide. What exactly they mean, we'll see in the coming slides. So once we get the metallic oxide, the metal oxide is then reduced using carbon and its form. That is the reduction step. Now, when the metal oxides combine with the carbon in its different form, it is reduced and finally we get the metal. This metal still is in the impure form, so we will carry out the purification of the metal and hence we will obtain pure metal. And the third case will be where we can see metal is of least reactivity, like silver, gold. For them, they generally exist in their native form as sulfide ores. So as they are sulfide ores, so we will carry out roasting for them. After doing roasting, we will directly get the metal, which is then finally refined to provide us pure metal. Now, let's understand first of all metals which are low in the activity series, how we can obtain them. So we have just discussed that they generally exist in their sulfide forms. So for them, we are going to carry out roasting. So let's understand what is roasting. So for example, let's take mercury. So mercury is Hg. So its sulfide ore is called as cinnabar, that is HgS, and the name of the ore is cinnabar. So now, when HgS is heated in oxygen, that is the roasting. So what exactly is roasting? Roasting is a chemical process in which the sulfide ores are heated in presence of oxygen to provide us with oxides of metal. So when HgS is first converted to mercuric oxide, HgO, which is then reduced to mercury on further reaction, on heating. So the first reaction, this is the roasting step, which is heating in presence of oxygen. When it is done, we get the metallic oxide. Now the second step is when we heated the mercuric oxide, on further heating it will simply give us the metal. So we do not need to do the reduction step. On heating, straight away it is giving us the metal, and finally this metal will be refined. Refining is done and the pure metal will be obtained. Same, let's discuss copper. Now in case of copper, we have the ore copper sulfide, which is CuS. So now CuS is the copper ore. So it is sulfide. So we will do the process of roasting for it. Roasting is heating the ore in presence of oxygen. So it will give us copper oxide plus sulfur dioxide gas. So this is my roasting step. After roasting the copper oxide, it combines with some other part of copper sulfide, and then we can see that copper oxide combining with copper sulfide, it gives us the metal along with sulfur dioxide gas. This metal is impure, it is further refined to provide pure metal. Talking about metals of moderately reactive. So, metals which are moderately reactive, for example, zinc, iron, lead, what we do for them? So, these can exist either in their sulfides ore or in their oxides or as their carbonates. In case of sulfides, we have already seen we do roasting, which is heating in presence of oxygen. But if we have a carbonate ore, we are going to do calcination. Calcination is a process in which we heat the ore in absence of oxygen. So when we do this, this is called calcination. It is only done for carbonate ores. So metals are easier to extract from oxides. That is why we are first converting any metal ore into its oxide. If it's carbonate or it's sulfide, we first convert it into oxide, and then this oxide, metallic oxide, is reduced to give us metal. Now, the roasting definition is mentioned over here, heating ores with oxygen to convert sulfides to oxides. That means we do roasting for only sulfide ores. So, over here you can see the zinc sulfide ore. When the roasting process is done, it gives us zinc oxide plus SO2 gas. In case of calcination, we can see the other example. The ore taken is zinc carbonate, ZnCO3. So when it is heated in absence of air, which is calcination, we are getting zinc oxide plus carbon dioxide gas. In both the cases, we are getting the same metallic oxide, zinc oxide, zinc oxide. The only difference is for sulfide ore, we heat in presence of oxygen, while for calcination, which is the carbonate ore, we heat in absence of oxygen. So over here also we are heating but in absence of oxygen. The resultant zinc oxide will then further reduced with carbon. So oxide ores are then reduced to metals using a reducing agent like coke, that is carbon. So the reducing agent is used coke, which is a form of carbon. So ZnO plus C, which is coke, gives us zinc plus CO, carbon monoxide. This zinc is impure, it is further refined, and then we get the pure zinc metal. Now let's see for in case of manganese dioxide and aluminium. Now in case of manganese, we can see that MnO2 combines with aluminium metal to form manganese, which is the metal, and Al2O3 oxide. So manganese oxide, it combines with aluminium to give Mn metal straight away. Now let's see what is exactly happened in that reaction. We could see that aluminium is oxidized to Al2O3. So oxidation was happening, while manganese dioxide is reduced to Mn, so reduction was happening. So we could see that oxidation reduction was happening, and also it is an example of displacement reaction. Now let's talk about their exothermic nature. Exothermic means, exo means exit over here, just to understand, and thermic means heat. So reactions in which heat is released are exothermic in nature. The reaction is highly exothermic, producing enough heat to melt the metal. So in this reaction, a lot of heat is produced. This heat is used to melt the metal. Now let's come to the reaction, thermite reaction, the reaction which we have just discussed between MnO2 and aluminium, which gives us Al2O3 oxide and manganese metal. It is also called as thermite reaction. So the reactive metals like sodium, calcium and aluminium can be used as a reducing agent to extract metals from their oxides. For example, we have taken MnO2. Now this MnO2 is combined with aluminium, where aluminium is behaving as a reducing agent. So aluminium will reduce MnO2 to produce manganese metal, whereas itself it will get oxidized to give Al2O3 oxide. So this is our thermite reaction in which a lot of heat is produced. It is an exothermic reaction of metal oxides with aluminium. It produces melted metal. For example, Fe2O3 plus aluminium. Again, we can see the example. So in this case, iron is obtained. Since a lot of heat is produced, this heat is sufficient to melt the metals. That's why we are getting the molten metals. It is also used to join railway tracks and fixed machinery. So you must have seen whenever railway tracks need to join, so a chemical reaction takes place exactly. They melt and they join. So that melting part is this. So where iron oxide combines with aluminium to form Al2O3 and iron. Now let's move to extraction of highly reactive metals, the third category. So metals like sodium, potassium, which are of highly reactivity. So we do electrolysis of their ore. So electrolysis of molten sodium chloride is carried out. So we can see that once we do electrolysis, we will get at cathode Na positive plus electron will occur and we will get sodium metal deposited over here. That means at cathode, reduction is taking place. While at anode, the two chloride ion, they lose electrons, they form Cl2 gas and give away the 2 electrons. So over here, gas is released, Cl2, and the process taking place is oxidation. So we can see that top reactive metals like potassium, sodium, calcium, aluminium are extracted by electrolytic reduction of molten chloride. So in this case, we have taken the electrolysis of molten sodium chloride. So we can see that metals from reduction processes, they contain impurities. So hence, we need to do the refining. So electrolytic refining is the most common method used to purify metals after reduction. So it is used for metals like copper, zinc and gold. And in this case, what we have to do? We have to do electrolytic refining. So for electrolytic refining, we require the anode and cathode and the electrolyte. The anode used is the impure metal, the one which we want to refine, and the cathode is a pure metal. For example, I want to do refining of gold. So I will place the block of gold which is impure as my anode and a wire of gold which is pure in nature as the cathode. And what will be the electrolyte? Electrolyte will be the salt solution of that metal only. So the metal salt solution is used as electrolyte and the current deposits pure metal on the cathode and some impurities are formed below anode called as anode mud. Now let's try to understand the electrolytic refining of copper through this animation. So in this electrolytic refining of copper, we take impure copper metal as the anode and the pure strip of copper metal as the cathode. So what is going to happen when the electric current will be flowing through the electrolyte, which is the acidified copper sulfate solution, the salt solution of the metal, same metal only, the circuit is complete. So the moment electric current is flowing, the flow of electrons occur, because of which some copper 2 plus ions from the anode, which is the impure metal, from it copper 2 plus ions will come into the salt solution. Suppose 5 Cu2 positive have come from the anode into the salt solution. So the same number of copper 2 plus ions from the electrolyte will move and they get attracted to the cathode, which is the negatively charged. So those 5 Cu2 positive ions from the electrolyte will go to cathode and over there they are reduced. So they gain electrons and they deposit at cathode as pure copper metal. So over here what we can see, the copper, impure copper from anode gets oxidized, gives copper 2 plus ions which go into the electrolyte. Same number of copper 2 plus ions from the electrolyte will go to the cathode. They will get reduced, they will gain electron and form copper solid. This copper solid is pure. So with time, like with 1 hour or 2 hours, what we are going to observe, there will be 3 observations. First of all, the impure metal at anode will become very less because most of the copper from it has come out as copper 2 positive, and the impurities left at the anode will settle below anode and called as anode mud. While at cathode, the pure metal kept on depositing, so the weight of copper on the cathode will be more at the end. So you can see this in the animation also. So we initially took a copper wire, but now it is a big copper block at cathode. So this weight is what? It is the weight of the copper deposited, which is the pure copper. Now let's move to the next important topic, that is corrosion. So what is corrosion? Well, any damage to metal which is caused by reactions with oxygen, moisture and carbon dioxide is called corrosion. So basically degradation of metal in presence of water, oxygen, acids, that leads to corrosion. Some examples are rusting of iron. So rusting of iron is an example of corrosion where we see rust is formed, which is a reddish brown coating. Then we can see copper utensils over time they become greenish. So that greenish coating on copper is also corrosion. That green coating is of basic copper carbonate. And you must have also seen that silver, when exposed to air, after some time it becomes blackish. That black silver that you see, that black layer is of silver sulfide that is formed over the time. This is also an example of corrosion. So we can see that metal gets degraded over time when exposed to atmospheric oxygen and water. Now let's try to understand one activity. For this we require 3 test tubes and some iron nails. Now in test tube 1 we will add calcium chloride, which is anhydrous, that means only air and no water, no moisture is there in the salt. In test tube B we have taken boiled distilled water with oil layer. So it has only water, no air. While in the test tube 3 we have water, and both air and water are present in this test tube 3. So what we are going to observe after few days, we will observe that in test tube 1, in which in all of the test tubes we have added the iron nail. So in test tube 1 no rusting occurs as there was only air but no water. So we can see that for rusting both air and water are required. While in test tube B again no rusting occurs because as there was only water but not air. So the other component was missing. While in test tube 3 the nail, iron nail, is rusted as both air and water are present. So what we can conclude, that both air and moisture are required for rusting to occur. Now let's try to understand, once corrosion is done, what we are supposed to do. We need to prevent it. So let's try to understand how to prevent corrosion. So there are some methods through which we can prevent corrosion. First one is apply oil or grease. Second, apply paint. Then the third one is a very important one, galvanization. Galvanization is applying a layer of another metal over the iron metal. The other metal is zinc or steel coating. The fourth one is tinning, in which a tin coating is done. And the next one is electroplating. In electroplating, a less reactive metal is coated like chromium. So the taps that we have at our house, the shiny layer you see on the taps, that is the chromium layer. And the tins, the cold drink cans that we use, that we see in the market, those cold drink cans, this layer that of metal you see, that is the tin. Next method is alloying, which means forming alloys. So let's first focus on galvanization. So galvanization was applying a layer of zinc or steel. So it helps to prevent rust and corrosion of the iron metal. It increases the durability, the life of the iron article. Zinc acts as a protective barrier between the iron metal and the atmospheric moisture and air. So process of galvanization, what we can see these images. In these images, the iron metal is galvanized. That means it has a coating of zinc around it. Now when this happens, it's not that zinc will not combine with air. When this happens, zinc will combine with air, it will form a zinc oxide and this layer will remain there. So it will form a protective barrier. This layer will protect the inside metal from getting corroded. Now there's some extra information. Gold for jewelry making. So the pure gold is 24 carat. It is very soft and it is so soft that it is not even suitable for making jewelry. So what we do, we try to add some other metal to it, and this process is done by melting those metals and then adding in a proportion. So when this is done, this is called as alloying. So basically adding metals in their melted form in certain proportion to get certain properties is called alloying. So over here we can see that alloying for strength. So alloyed with silver or copper to increase hardness. So gold is then alloyed with copper or silver and its hardness is increased. That's why the jewelries which are there, they are made from gold which has a certain metal added to it, and that is why the purity of gold is 22 carat, because 24 carat is pure. So the gold jewelry that we go and buy in market, the maximum purity of gold that we can get is 22 carat for jewelry. So what exactly 22 carat means? So 22 carat gold in India. It means that 22 parts of pure gold are alloyed with 2 parts of silver or copper. So you can see the proportion is 24 carats. 24 carat is pure gold. So out of this we have removed 2 parts of gold and added either silver or copper to it, and hence it becomes 22 carat gold because it contains 22 parts of pure gold. It is used to making ornaments because now it is hard and not so soft and can be used to make jewelry. Now let's come to the alloy, which is another important way to prevent corrosion. Alloying is an alloy is a homogeneous mixture of metal with other metals or non-metals. Homogeneous mixture means that we are mixing them uniformly, and yes, we mix them in melted form. For example, steel. Steel contains iron. It contains carbon, which is a non-metal. Whereas stainless steel that we use as utensil at home, it contains iron, carbon, cobalt and nickel. The other alloy, brass, it contains copper and zinc. Bronze, it contains copper and tin. Then we have solder, it contains lead, tin, and this is used for welding electrical wires. You must have heard the word soldering. So basically, solder, this alloy is used over there. Alloys containing mercury are called as amalgams. So when alloying is done using mercury, it is called as amalgam. Now let's try to understand some more extra information. The 1600-year-old iron pillar near Qutub Minar is rust resistant. That means it does not get rust. Why so? It is 8 meters tall and weighs about 6 tons. Scientists worldwide have studied its rust-proof quality. So think about what could be the reason that it is rust-proof. Well, the reason must be about the composition, the alloying. So let's try to sum up what we have done in today's class, because now we have come to an end of the chapter. So we have talked about sodium chloride formation, magnesium chloride formation, properties of ionic compounds. We have seen occurrence of metals, in what forms metals occur, and based on the reactivity in the activity series of these metals, we can have different ways to extract them. We have also seen displacement reaction when we were discussing thermite reactions. So the next thing is thermite reaction, which is used in joining the railway tracks also. Then we have seen what is corrosion and what is alloying. With this, we have come to an end to today's class as well as the chapter metal and non-metal. I hope the session was interesting and you have learned so many new concepts about the chapter. Thank you for watching today's class. See you in next Install Chemistry class.